I'm Jennifer Della Quadri, and this is the Raising Happy Teens podcast, where you learn how to successfully guide your teenager into adulthood without losing your sanity in the process. Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. We are here in January 2025, and when you are listening to this, it will be the official second week of January. So this is a time of year where there's a lot of newness and there's a lot of energy around possibility, goal setting, and how to make this year even better than the last one. I've shared on Instagram that one of the things that I always like to do at the end of each year is to do like a review of the year. What went well? What didn't go well? What do I want to do differently? And I shared that on my Instagram. And I also do it in my personal life with my friends, and we make vision boards and those kinds of things. It's really fun for me. And another thing that I shared on Instagram, and this is what inspired this episode, is some of the things that I implemented last year for my health to improve how I feel about myself, about how I look, my energy level. And so I'm going to be talking more about this today, because when I shared that, I had a bunch of people reaching out like, what do you do? Tell me more. And I don't know about you, but I just love hearing what works for other people when it comes to living a healthy lifestyle. It's inspirational to me to hear what other people do. And if you're anything like me, you'll take that and you'll be like, okay, well, these are some things that I'd be willing to try. And this works for me, or I don't want that. And so I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about that today, specifically around my physical, and I might talk about my mental health too, because that's equally important, if not more so, today. So another thing that I wanted to talk about before I even dive into that is our podcast here. Our little family got a rebrand. So you may have noticed that the podcast cover is a little bit different. It's updated with a new picture of me. I actually have a logo now. I hired a team to help me with that because that is not my area of expertise. I'm an expert on parent coaching. Of course, as an entrepreneur, I have to learn a lot about how to do things like marketing and sales, and that's been fun for me, but knowing how to brand myself and colors and photography, not my thing. So I did hire someone to do that for me. Angie, thank you so much for being so supportive. And you may have noticed that. And part of this rebrand is still talking about parenting, but I'm really wanting to lean into focusing on improving quality of life as a person. Because what I know for sure is if you are enjoying your life, if you feel good and fulfilled and healthy and energetic in your life, that's going to rub off on all areas, parenting included. So if you come here and you want to know in my shows how to help your teenager, I will tell you the number one thing that you can do is help yourself. And I know that from my personal experience. That's actually something I just shared with my email list. If you're not on my email list, get on there, because I share a lot of my personal experiences and what led me to do what I do. And I know that there was a time in my life where on the outside, everything looked perfect. Like, of course, it was during that curated social media phase where everybody was just like, let's make sure the photos have filters and we look good and we share our wins. On the outside, everything looked amazing, but on the inside, I was suffering from crushing anxiety. I was also stuck in a job that I knew was no longer a fit for me, and I didn't know what to do. That was in 2018, 2019, like around that transition, and that's when I decided to go back and get my coaching certification, and that's where everything changed for me. So I share all of this because I want to reinforce the idea to you that your life experience is not an end result. There is no end where you're like, oh my gosh, I've made it. I've checked all of the boxes. There is nothing else left for me. I have accomplished all I want to accomplish. That doesn't happen. But what I also know is that if you are in a place where you feel like you've accomplished the things that you are wanting to accomplish, where you wake up in the morning and you're excited about what you're going to do, you feel healthy in your body, you have things to look forward to, you have things to be grateful for, you have good connections with the people that you spend your days with, you're not living in lack. And when you have a life that's set up for you like that, your teenager will benefit. Your teenager will feel more confident. Your relationship with them will be better. And so when I record episodes in this coming year, there will definitely be a lens through which it is self-reflective and improving your life, not just focusing on helping your teenager. I have 150 episodes that are about how to help your teenager. Moving forward, I'm going to talk a lot more about how to help yourself. And that is where today's episode comes in. I shared in my Instagram story that I lost 15 pounds last year. And I'm always motivated to understand how people do that. And one of the things that I've personally have had to do a lot of work around is weight loss, body image. And if you were raised in the 80s and 90s, if you're here, then you probably were. There was so much emphasis put on body and being thin and weight loss and diet and exercise and the Jane Fonda and, the cabbage soup diet, like all that stuff was out there at that time. And the message was very clear. You are better if you are thinner. And so because of that, I really internalized this, I don't want to be someone who's sending that message out there. I don't want to be part of that message that's like, lose weight, feel better, be happier, because I know that's just not true. And as a result, I just feel like I don't talk about it at all because I don't want to be part of that narrative. But at the same time, I focus on it a lot in my life. It's a big part of my life, and it has been ever since I had kids. So who am I to not share what works for me with people out there who it may help? And that is the point of this podcast, is to help you be a better person, enjoy your life. So if you are in a place in your life where either you're in perimenopause or menopausal, then this is really going to help you. Because as somebody who has been really into fitness and really into eating healthy for a long time, I got smacked over the head with perimenopause. I started experiencing the effects of perimenopause when I was about 40. And at the time, I told my doctor what was going on. My mom had menopause at 36. I feel like this is what's happening. And my doctor said, no, you're too young. And I listened. And one of my main symptoms at that time was anxiety. I'd always had anxiety, but around the age of 40, it really picked up to where I felt like I had a burning ball of fire in my chest all day. And it would go in cycles. Sometimes it would go away, thankfully, but then it would come back. So then I got on antidepressants because that's what the doctor told me to do. And it helped. It took the edge off, as it were, so that actually placated me for several years. Then as I neared my mid-40s, I needed to have a hysterectomy. So I had a hysterectomy about 5 years ago, and it's been fantastic. It was a good procedure, but I don't know for sure, but it may have sped up menopausal symptoms for me. I'm not sure. It probably would have happened anyway. But either way, the next level, I guess you could say, of menopause for me, perimenopause, was weight gain. And again, at the time, I was like, okay, I'm gaining weight, but I'm not changing anything, I don't think. But at the same time, I had also just moved to another state, and there was a lot of change in my life. This is also when my daughter was really struggling with mental health, where we were in and out of hospitals, residential treatment. And so focusing on healthy eating and maintaining a healthy weight was just not a priority. And when people would see me, it's not like the weight gain was so apparent where they would see me and go, oh gosh, she's gained weight. But it's one of those things where on the inside, I was like, oh my gosh, wow. I have gained a lot of weight here. I didn't want to weigh myself anymore, but I knew I needed to buy new clothes. And I've always been about body positivity, so I didn't let it get to me too much. But what was frustrating is even when I would actually buckle down and be like, okay, I'm going to follow these guidelines, I'm going to do these things because I really want to get back to where I was before because it felt good to me to be at that place, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. I would shave off the calories and focus on all the protein and do the exercises, and my weight would kind of dip down, but it'd go back up and nothing was helping. And so again, I went to the doctor and I was like, okay, I'm waking up at 3 a.m. I'm having trouble sleeping. My anxiety is still there, coupled with a little bit of depression. I've gained weight. I've got this like ball of jelly in my stomach that just isn't going away. And what the heck is going on? And at the time, I think I was probably 48 at the time. I'm 50 now, so this was a couple of years ago. I even went to a menopause specialist. And she's like, I don't think that's it, but we'll do some blood work and just check and this and that, but you're still kind of young for that. And I was like, okay, do some blood work, please. Lo and behold, when the blood work came back, she's like, oh, you're in full-blown menopause. Like I had already crossed that line and I didn't know because I was no longer having a period. So how would I know that I was in menopause other than these horrible symptoms that I was having? And I was like, why didn't you listen to me when I said this was going on? I said I was in a menopause and everybody said I was too young. I could go on and on about that, but it did help to know, to have an answer like, okay, this is not failure on my part. This is just my body is transitioning into this new level. I'm leveling up into menopause. And so these are the fun things that I get to deal with as a result. So if you are hearing all of this and you're like nodding your head like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Oh my gosh, this is happening to me too. It really does impact your confidence. And it did for me. I know. I remember last year we were on a trip and I was just crying in the shower. We were in Hawaii and I'm like, this is the most beautiful place. The weather is amazing. I'm here with my family and I feel like shit because I feel so bloated and unhealthy, even though I'm doing all the things I used to do. Why do I feel so awful? And it was in the shower that February last year where I said, enough. I had been started on hormone replacement therapy. So fortunately that helped with a lot of the symptoms, but I'm like, this is it. I'm making the decision. When we get back from this trip, I'm going to get serious about getting back to a body shape and size that feels good to me. So that is the story that led me to making some changes that actually really worked for me. And I'm going to share them with you today. So with everything I say on this podcast, this is what worked for me. It's not necessarily what I would recommend you do. I want you to hear it and you decide. So I'm going to share my story on what I did and what worked for me. And you take it and you run it through your filter and you decide if that's how you want to do things. But I also want to reassure you right now and let you know that it worked for me. And even if you're feeling like I was last February, like, I guess this is it for me. I guess that, the best years of my life and my fitness and my health are behind me. I guess I'm just going to be like this forever. That's not the case. It can turn around and there are ways for you to feel better. So if you're feeling like that and you're hearing this from me, know that that's not the end of your story. And I've implemented these things and I'm going to share them with you. And I'm telling you this almost a year later that I feel so much better in my life. It's not perfect. It never is, and it never will be, but it is so much better than it was. Okay, so let me share with you those tips. I'm going to start with fitness because fitness has always been a big thing for me. Stepping up my fitness or being more intentional with my fitness was not a big deal for me. Like, this is not something new. I've been really regular with fitness for, 20, 30, 25 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. So this wasn't a big shift for me, but I will share with you what I do. We got a Peloton bike. I've cycled in the past and it's always worked for me, but I had stopped for a while just because we had this old janky bike and I just wasn't motivated to do it. But we got the Peloton and that helped. So I started cycling and I kept my goal to be manageable. My goal is not to kick my own ass. My goal is to get on the bike, raise my heart rate, develop my endurance and my cardiovascular health. So I do that typically 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll do a longer ride that's a little more intense. Sometimes I'll do like HIIT stuff. Sometimes I'll do like a restorative or a low impact. Sometimes I'll do something in the middle. It's really a matter of how I'm feeling that day. 20 minutes to 45 minutes, again, how I feel that day. So around 3 times a week, I'll do that. And then for strength training, I cannot recommend enough for you. If you're somebody who has always just been into cardio, strength training is essential in midlife and beyond. So if you haven't started strength training, hire a personal trainer if you don't really know how to move your body in that way, just so you can be safe. But lifting heavy weights, not to the point of injury, but it challenges your muscles. So I do strength training about 4 times a week, depending on my schedule. And I will do upper body 2 days, lower body 2 days. Or I will do 3 days a week where I'm doing upper and lower, all 3 days. So my goal is to do at least 2 days of legs and 2 days of upper body. And then I kind of sprinkle in core throughout that. And sometimes I'll do that right after the bike. Sometimes I'll do that after a walk. It just, again, my schedule changes, but that's my goal. So that's the strength training. And then, I'm a yoga instructor. Yoga has always been a part of my life. Well, ever since I was, 28. So it's been quite a while. And yoga is still a big part of my life. I don't have a studio nearby that I love, but I will practice yoga at home. And I use the Peloton app for that too. I practice yoga 1 time a week, minimum. Sometimes I'll do more, but rarely. And sometimes I'll go to a studio again, but rarely. And the point for me is for mobility and flexibility, and that will reduce injury. And it's something that I maintain. And then the last thing that I do for movement is I walk. My goal is to walk 7,500 steps a day on average. So some days I may be 10,000 plus, some days I may be 4,000. And even if that means walking around my living room while listening to a podcast, I just make sure that I get movement in steps wise. So my goal last year, for the last 2 years, has been averaging 7,500 steps a day. And both years I've averaged 8,500 steps a day. So that's just how I roll. It's like, well, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to blow that out of the water because it's just never going to be good enough. But 8,500 steps a day was my average last year. Most of the time I'll be outside while I'm walking because I want to be in nature, which combines the wellness aspect of, just being outside for it. So I go outside for my walks most of the time, unless the weather is just horrendous. And then we also have a Peloton tread. I don't love treadmills, but if you do, go for it. But we use the tread. I can use the tread if I want to, or I can just walk around my living room. So that is my movement strategy. That is my exercise, my routine there, and it's pretty consistent. Now I'm going to share a little bit about my nutrition because that is probably one of the most challenging changes I've had to make. I've always been a really healthy eater. I don't overindulge too much. I don't overdo it on sugar, but even being as aware as I was, none of that was actually helping me maintain the weight that I had always maintained. I was eating what I thought was the same number of calories and the same food, but the scale just kept going up and I felt like I was getting bigger and bigger without changing anything. So I had tried in the past to kind of buckle down and be really aware of how many calories I'm eating and pay attention to macros and all of that. And it would work for a little bit, but then nothing would happen on the scale. And I would just throw in the towel and say, forget it. This isn't worth it. I'm starving all of the time. I can't do this. And so going back to that time when I was on vacation and I was in the shower crying, like I said, that was a turning point for me. And I said, I am going to stick with this for at least a year because I had seen something on Instagram. It was a video where one of the guys that I follow, his name is Jordan Sayat. Sciat Fitness. And he was saying, there are ups and downs on the scale. And he gave some really great tips on what happens if you're cutting the calories and you're maintaining a calorie deficit and nothing is actually changing, or the scale is going up. So instead of just quitting or like really slashing calories to where you're starving all of the time, which is what I was doing, he recommended just shaving off like 100 calories or walking a little bit more. So not making these big drastic cuts, but doing that micro shift and just see if it made a difference. And so I did that. I started with what was a recommended daily calorie allowance for myself, and then I really focused on protein, getting at least 100 grams of protein a day. And like I said, that was probably the biggest shift because I'm a pescatarian. I don't eat meat, but I do eat fish. And so I had to be really aware of how much protein I was eating, and it turns out I wasn't eating enough. So I stuck with my calories, and the scale shifted a little bit, and then I just kind of shaved off 100 calories. And I didn't want to be too, I've never been somebody who wants to lose a lot of weight all at once. I know that's not healthy, but I wanted to lose some weight, and I wanted to feel better. So I shaved off 100 calories, and I just stuck with it for another month. And lo and behold, the scale started to go down. And turns out that it was just my body that needed to adjust to this new way of eating, to eating this amount of calories, this amount of protein, this amount of fat and carbs with the exercise that I was already doing. And so I stuck with it, and then I noticed the scale finally starting to reflect a change. And for me, I lost 15 pounds, and I'd say it was over the course of about 5 months, which was perfect. I didn't want to lose more weight than that, and I didn't want to lose it more quickly than that because I knew that that wouldn't be sustainable, because if I lose 5 pounds in a week, I'm going to gain it right back because that's not sustainable. And my whole goal was to set myself up with a lifestyle that I could do that wasn't hard for me, that was achievable. And I will say, I spent about 2 weeks just feeling like I was hungry all of the time. And I was eating the required nutritions. I wasn't starving myself. I was being really careful about eating fruits and vegetables and making it well-rounded. I'd never paid so much attention to the food that was going into my body than I did at that time. And like I said, it was just an adjustment, paying attention, being more proactive, planning ahead, making sure I had food in my refrigerator, all of the things I've always known how to do. But I've never really had to think about too much because what I was doing was working. And like I said, once I hit perimenopause, it stopped working. So I had to adjust, and I did. And after those 2 weeks of feeling like I was hungry all the time, it was like I was at a new normal. It was a new amount of calories that I was eating. I felt healthy. I felt strong. I felt lighter. And then I also want to speak a little bit to drinking. I've never been much of a drinker. I drink, I know when I was younger, I definitely drank in college and, in my 20s and things. But my lifestyle, I'll have a drink here and there. I'll go out for beers and stuff like that. But I really did realize that drinking wasn't something that was benefiting me, and it made me feel like crap the next day, and it just kind of derailed me. And I think I'm more sensitive to alcohol than I was in the past as well. Another really great benefit of menopause. So I definitely wasn't consuming a ton of calories and alcohol. So that was kind of a bonus as well. And then as far as sweets and sugars, I just found, I like having a treat after dinner. And I just found alternative sweets that weren't so calorie dense, and also finding sweets that provided some nutritive value as well. So that's kind of what I ate. And I'm not going to get too much into the numbers and everything because there's calorie calculators and stuff like that out there for you that you can figure out for yourself. But for me, it was just logging the number of calories that I ate per day and being really honest about it, even if I went over, and also making sure that I wasn't going too far under. So for me, it was also just making sure I had balance and healthy and I wasn't overdoing it. So keeping track of that, and then also really paying attention to the number of grams of protein I was having every day. So that's kind of in a nutshell how my diet looked this past year. And then as far as my mental and emotional and, just well-being, for my health there. My goal is to meditate 10 minutes a day. Typically, I do it in the morning. I also have a reflection journal where I'll write things that I'm grateful for, things I'm looking forward to, lessons I've learned. It's just part of my ritual in the morning and how I kind of set myself up with a peaceful morning for the day. I also have a therapist. I go to therapy, and I also have a coach, somebody who helps me with my business and helps me stay consistent with my goals. So therapy and coaching, meditation. And then as far as mental health goes, I make sure that I'm connecting with friends. And last year it was a big goal of mine to become closer with more friends. I have a really close family, so that can be counted as friends, but I wanted people outside of my family that I could connect with in new ways. And I started doing that. And that fills my cup quite a bit. So I reach out to people, I set up coffee dates, we go for hikes, we do sound baths together, yoga festivals, just finding people that I like who are into the same weird shit that I'm into and doing it with them on a regular basis. And then another thing I always like to do is listen to podcasts or listen to things that inspire me or read books that kind of make me feel like I am evolving as a human. And so all of that, and of course, connecting with my kids and making sure I'm spending time with them. But knowing what to focus on for me when it comes to mental health really does come back to tapping into my intuition, and that's where my meditation comes in. Just quiet reflection where I'm not distracted by other people. I'm just breathing. I'm calming and regulating my nervous system. I'm opening myself to receive insight or messages from my higher self. Again, I do that in the morning because typically that's when my brain is most calm, and it feels really good throughout the rest of the day to know that I've done that. It's also hard for me personally to stop everything in the middle of the day and sit and do a meditation. I know I wouldn't be consistent with that. So that's, in a nutshell, my wellness routine, and it's what's worked for me. Like I said, last year, I had a really good health year. I feel really energetic right now. I feel really strong. I'm also taking my hormone replacement therapy. I really recommend looking into that if you feel safe doing so, if it's suited for you, if you're in a place where you need it. And I take my vitamin D. Other than that, I don't really take a lot of vitamins. So that's what I do, and that's what works for me. And I really want to speak to the fact that when you are in a growth phase in your life, and you'll know if you're in a growth phase because you'll feel inspired to do new things and to stay consistent with things that really help you. If you're in a growth phase, it helps so much to have a coach. If you're in a healing phase, it helps so much to have a therapist. If you're in both, have both. And one thing that having a coach for me is essential because it gives me a place where I can talk about my goals, talk about what's holding me back from my goals, and kind of knock down all of the garbage that's standing between where I am now and where I want to be. And having a coach for me really helps me get past my bullshit. It shines a light on the areas of where I am sabotaging myself, patterns that I step into when I am feeling like a victim, and helping shift my mindset out of it, but also helping me stay accountable to my goals with really good action steps. And that's what I do with the clients I work with. I have a lot of women specifically that I've helped in the past where they are in a place where I was 6+ years ago, where I just felt like, you know what? This is not it. This is not it. My relationships are okay, but I want them to be better. My career wasn't where I wanted it to be. If you have areas of your life where you're like, this is not going to be the rest of my story, but I don't know what to do to make it better, coaching. I help my clients. I will help you get clear on where you want to be, but more importantly, get clear on what it is that's holding you back from being there. Because you can get there. I am living proof that you can get beyond that stuck phase, that place where you just feel like there's nothing exciting to look forward to, or you just feel like things are just off and you want more for yourself. That is what I am here to help you do. So if you're in that phase, here we are in January 2025. This is the year where you could turn it all around and look back like I am a year later and say, look at how far I've come. Look at how much is going on in my life that I am grateful for and that I appreciate. So if that's you and you're ready to make some changes and you are wanting support with that, schedule a consultation with me. So what we do is we just get on a Zoom call. We talk a little bit about where you are, where you want to be, and I will tell you how we can work together as a team, the strategies I'm going to give you, the things that I see are standing in your way. I will tell you exactly what it is that's blocking you. And then we will make a plan for how to make this your best year ever. So just click the link in the show notes, schedule your consultation, and we'll connect on that. As always, I appreciate that you're here. If you're finding this podcast to be helpful, it would be so great if you could leave a comment or subscribe, like, share, just to get this in the hands of more people so that we can have happier, better middle life experiences as parents of teenagers and beyond. So thanks so much for tuning in this week, and I will see you next time. If you liked this episode, I'd like to invite you to join Raising Happy Teens, my free online community for parents of teenagers, where every week I host Ask a Coach. You bring your parenting questions, and I provide expert advice and coaching. Click the link in the show notes to join today. I'll see you inside.